Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining and welcome back to Wall Street Silver. Today is the founder of Adrian Day Asset Management, the man himself, and my good friend, Adrian Day. How are you, sir?
Well, I'm fine, thanks, Simon. How are you?
I'm doing really good. And it's the new year, it's 2024, but there's already so many crazy things happening in the economy. People are really keeping a close eye on what's happening with the Federal Reserve and, of course, precious metals. What is your outlook, Adrian, for the start of 2024 for the Fed and precious metals?
Yeah, I'm very bullish. As you know, Ivan, for the last sort of 18 months, and really even before that, I've been a little more cautious than some of my colleagues. And when the Fed started tightening, um, my message was that gold would take off. You remember there was a lot of concern, why aren't gold and silver moving more
Right.
with inflation moving up. And I always said gold will really take off, gold and silver will really take off when the Fed signals that it's pausing and pivoting before inflation has been conquered.
Hmm.
And we are exactly in that position now. Jerome Powell and the Fed generally in their statement and their dot plot, and in Jerome Powell in his press conference 2, 3 weeks ago, whatever, mid-December, they could not have been clearer. But we are not going to see more rate hikes,
Hmm.
and that we are going to see rate cuts this year. I personally was sort of a little bit taken aback, but Powell didn't at least sort of, push back a little bit
Right.
on the extreme optimism, but he didn't. And that's very telling in my mind. So to me, just to summarize, to me, what I was waiting for is the Fed pivoting before they've conquered inflation.
Hmm.
And it's very clear that we're going to see rate cuts this year. And it's also very clear to me that inflation has not been conquered. Now, is the market still a little bit optimistic?
Yeah.
After Powell spoke, the Fed funds futures was showing over 88% of
Wow.
participants were expecting one or more rate cuts by March. And I thought that was a little bit optimistic.
Yeah.
But now it's at 66%, 2/3. And given that the Fed members themselves in their dot plot, a majority are calling for rate cuts in March, I don't think I don't think that's overly optimistic at all.
And what happens, Adrian, if let's say something like the 70s repeat, where they cut the rates too early and then interest rate and then inflation starts rising rapidly again and then they're caught off guard. What happens if history repeats itself? And what
You know
about
exactly what happens, or at least you know exactly what my answer is. Yeah, they're going to start cutting too soon, and we're going to have a repeat of the 70s, which means we saw this exactly in the 70s, of course. Inflation came down, the Fed stopped, paused, and then and frankly, in the 70s, the pause was longer before they actually started to cut rates. I think we're going from raising rates to cutting rates in a very short period of time.
Mhm.
This time, and we'll see inflation start picking up again, maybe in the second quarter, but I would say certainly in the second half. A lot depends on oil, of course, and oil because oil feeds into everything, but
Right.
all the services in the stores. I mean, all the goods, not services. Not just transportation, not just the obvious ones like transportation and gasoline,
Everything,
but
groceries, everything.
yeah, it feeds into everything. And there are a lot of idiosyncratic factors that affect the oil price, including geopolitics, of course. So a lot depends on the oil price as to timing, but I don't think there's much doubt that we'll see higher inflation. We'll see inflation start to move back up in the second half. And let's not forget, Ivan, even if inflation doesn't move up from here,
Hmm.
by the Fed's own measure, the measure that they themselves say this is the measure we like. And they picked it, of course, 18 months ago when it was showing lower inflation and everything else was. But their core PCE, they picked it because it was lower than headline PCE and it was lower than the CPI.
Right.
But even by their own measure, it's still 60% above their own target. So they can't say we finished the job. They cannot do it by
Yeah,
their own.
the job's not finished. There's no way because I mean, like now we're talking about the repeat of 1970 and what happens to gold and silver. Let's say if 2024 comes, we're here, rate cuts come, inflation picks back up again, people rush to precious metals for safety. What happens to silver and gold? What are the heights that those prices can reach?
Well, for lots of reasons, I always hate sort of forecasting particular prices, especially as was it PT Barnum or someone said, if you're going to forecast a price, don't forecast a time.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
to me, gold is the standard. So it's more a question of how low is the dollar going to go rather than
Mhm.
how high is gold going to go. Um, I mean, my gosh, I think when we see the breakout, which may come as early as the second, I think it'll come as early as the second quarter. I think we're being a little optimistic if we're looking for something next week. But by the second quarter, we see gold move above 2100 convincingly. Then I think it moves fairly rapidly, and fairly rapidly in my world is 6-9 months, but it moves fairly rapidly to 2250, 2300,
Right.
which to me is staggering. Now, if we see gold firmly above 2100, and similar for silver, if we see gold firmly above 2100, we're going to see the XAU stocks move up 20-30%
Wow.
easily, and the developers and juniors, selectively will move up much more than that.
Wow. Oh, you were talking
I think
about
silver, if I may, silver and silver
yes.
stocks will catch up in that environment. You know, and I'm sure all your people listening know, if you look at the last year, gold has well outperformed the gold stocks, and the gold stocks and silver are more or less equal, but silver has well outperformed the silver stocks,
Right.
and the junior silver stocks are even, the lowest of the pile. If you look since, let's say, the beginning of November, when things turned, then you see a bit of a different picture. You see, let me just make sure I'm getting this right.
This is in 2023 of November?
I'm talking just 2 months ago.
Okay.
Um, uh, so for the last year, gold has outperformed the gold stocks and
Right.
outperformed silver. But if you just look in the last 2 months since gold bottomed, the junior silver miners are the top performer. The
Hmm.
silver miners are the second. The gold stocks are the third.
So the
And
gold
so
stocks have huge potential.
that's the pattern you expect to see when gold, and we use gold, I'm using here gold generically for the whole monetary metal complex,
Right.
all assets. When gold starts to move, you expect the gold stocks to outperform, and you expect silver to outperform, and that's exactly what we've seen. Silver hasn't, but the silver stocks have,
Hmm.
in the last 2 months, and I think we will see that in the period ahead.
So I just wanted to let everyone know about our new sponsor, Strategic Wealth Preservation. They are an international precious metals dealer and they are a secured storage provider that have headquarters in the Cayman Islands. The company owns and operates a large Class 3 UL rated vault in the Grand Caymans, and they offer other strategic locations as part of its global storage network. They specialize in the acquisition, secure storage, and liquidation of precious metals for individuals, companies, trusts, and wealth management professionals on behalf of their clients. So if you guys want to check them out, the link is in the description below. So you said a little bit earlier, Adrian, about the geopolitics with inflation for oil prices and how that can affect, let's say 2024 comes hypothetically, they cut rates, the Fed, they're trying to keep inflation down at the same time. But what if Russia and Saudi Arabia or the Middle East, they want to play their card? They know the rates have been cut. They want to drive inflation back up in US and kill the US dollar. They cut oil production or something. Is that possible? Is that the geopolitical risks with the Fed even cutting rates with them retaliating and trying to drive up oil prices, drive up inflation?
Sure, sure. And it could go both ways. I mean, one thing we should all focus on, with everything that's happening in the world geopolitically today,
Hmm.
and then specifically with what's happening in the Gulf and the Red Sea, it is astonishing that the oil price is not higher.
Yeah, that's true. I agree.
And when one thing I've learned in investing over the last, well, since I started as a teenager, so 50 years, oh gosh, let's say 49, it sounds better.
Yes.
Is that when markets don't move the way you think they should,
Something's broken.
you should really look to see if there's something that you're ignoring. And so I don't think, I mean, clearly OPEC is not very disciplined at the moment in cutting back on their demand, on their supply.
Right.
But I don't think we can say that there's been a huge surge of supply that will keep the price down. So is demand, the question I'm asking, I don't have an answer, but the question I'm asking is demand maybe a lot softer than we were thinking? Because again, with missiles and with US warships being under attack and attacking in the Gulf, you should be seeing a much higher oil price.
But you think hypothetically, because the demand worldwide is not there, because maybe just they're not reporting the correct numbers on whatever's going on, that's why oil prices isn't moving.
That's a possibility.
Wow.
There's something going on because as you said, oil should be higher.
Right. Yeah. Way higher. Even I honestly think silver and gold should be higher too. There's two wars in the world. There's, the US dollar and all these tensions and
Yeah.
crazy.
But as we've discussed before, gold and silver really tend to move on any kind of sustained basis
Right.
on monetary factors, much less than geopolitical factors.
Yeah, that's
And you
true.
look back on the last 50 years, whether it's 9/11 or all sorts of
Events.
the Gulf War.
Hmm.
The reaction in the gold market tends to be short-lived. A lot of it is already built into the price. I mean, 9/11 was a shock and came out of nowhere. I mean, analysts can say it didn't come out of nowhere. There was this, that, and the other, but the market was not expecting it.
Yeah, yeah,
People were
absolutely.
not expecting it. The war in the first Iraq war, it's a little bit different. We were expecting something. And the second Iraq war, we were expecting something. So typically, and with Ukraine, there was all this chatter. And I'm not saying that I definitely thought Russia would invade Ukraine. I didn't.
Hmm.
But certainly there was heightened tension with the troops on the border. So it wasn't a complete out of the blue shock.
Right.
And so typically these geopolitical things, you get tension building up before the event. And so it's already discounted to some extent in the price. So I think monetary factors are much more important. But with oil, we're talking about the real risk that physical oil is prevented from getting to market. That's an actual risk that will affect the supply of the commodity.
Like of what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz and everything in the Middle East. Like if they cut off 80 or 90% of the world's oil shipments going through that strait, then of course that monetary policy would affect gold or
Sure.
that oil prices. Yeah.
So there's definitely a scenario looking ahead a few months. There's definitely a scenario where OPEC might decide to become much more disciplined in holding back supply because they don't like what's happening in the US with the US dollar and US inflation. That's possible.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, it's
that's
absolutely
something we have to watch.
it's absolutely crazy, and I'm so grateful to have you on Come to Wall Street Silver and talk about everything, Adrian. We're going to keep a very close eye on what Powell's going to do next. And as the months develop, I'd love to have you back on. Where can people connect with you?
Yeah, the best way is the website is www.adrianday.com.
AdrianDay.com.
Yeah.
Perfect. We'll put a link in the description below so everyone can check out Adrian's website. And and yeah, we would love to have you back, Adrian. It's a huge
I'd
pleasure.
love to be back. Thank you. I always enjoy these interviews, Ivan.
Awesome. Talk to you soon, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.